Okay. There's 3 Hibbas now. Very popular name today.
In real life.
So out of curiosity, can you use the raise hand feature and raise your hand if you are part of the class of 2024? So everyone coming in first year. All right, okay, so we've got a handful of you. All right, and can you raise your hand if you're part of the class of 2022? So 3rd years? Oh, wow, okay, a lot more of you. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna start in 2 more minutes. And can you raise your hand if you are 2nd year, so class of 2023? Are there only, there's only one 2023 today? Interesting. Okay, good for you, Sarah.
right, so let's get this going. My name is Mahek, and I'm going into my third year of the BBA program, and I am your Vice President Academics BBA for this year.
And my name is Mina. I'm going into my fourth year, and I'm your VP Academics IBBA. Thank you so much for joining us today. And so we're going to get right into it with some enrollment guidelines.
Just before that, we're going to go over a few housekeeping items. So this slide deck is not going to be distributed, so please feel free to take notes during this session. We just want to encourage all of you to keep your camera on if you're comfortable, and just keep yourselves muted while you're not speaking. We will have the opportunity to do Q&A with all of our wonderful panelists, so just keep your questions until the end of the session. And we ask that you type your questions into the chat box so everyone can see them, and either Mina or myself will call on you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question to the panelists directly. This is a safe space, so it's totally fine if you want to ask a question that's in particular for you or your situation, but it is a public forum, so please be mindful of what you type in the chat. And we're also live on YouTube, so maybe think about that as well. And please ensure that you remain respectful at all times to all of the other participants and our panelists.
All right, so enrollment for this year is coming up, and it's already happened for some of you, but we just want to go over some basics. This year, you're going to see some differences in your course codes. So we have 3 different course codes that you need to look out for. So the first one is online, and the second and third are lecture and blended. So the difference between these course codes are whether or not you're learning synchronously or asynchronously. That is, if you're all on Zoom at the same time or you're going at your own speed. So if you're taking a course that says ONLN, that means you are taking an online course where there is no scheduled meeting time. So your responsibility is to just hand in assignments at the deadlines that your profs give you and go at your own pace. If you are taking a lecture or a blended course, some or all of your meeting times will be scheduled for you, and you'll actually see them on your Plot My timetable. So look out for those because you are required to be online at the times where your prof is as well. And for the third years and fourth years, the wait list for all of your elective courses opens Tuesday, July 14th at 10 a.m. So that is a date and time you should remember, just in case you don't get into the course you want to in your first go. So for BBA students, you do have 2 mandatory courses to be taking in your third and fourth year, and that's SGMT 3000 and MGMT 4100. You can choose to take MGMT 4100 in your third year as well if you'd like to, but if you don't take it in your third, you must take it in your fourth year in order to be able to graduate. So I've also included a list of how many credits you need of Schulich electives, electives in general, or non-business electives. A lot of students tend to forget that you do need 12 credits of non-business electives in order to graduate. So please keep that in mind for your third and fourth year as well. For our IBBA students here today, it's the same thing, except as you know, your course codes start with INTL, so you have to take INTL 3000 and INTL 4300 as well. Where it differs is when you've got your language and regionally focused courses. So as you know, you need to reach advanced proficiency in one language. If you've reached advanced already and it's within that 18 credits, you can still continue to take another language, or you must use those credits for your regionally focused electives. So you need to take 6 credits of those in your third or fourth year. And in order to be able to graduate, you must have 12 credits in total. So you would have taken 6 in your second year, and you're going to need another 6 in either year 3 or year 4. And finally, you can take 18 credits of either Schulich or non-business electives. And so on the topic of non-business electives, here are some really important rules for both BBAs and IBBA students. So BBA students, if you have completed your second year and you're not behind on any credits, you would have finished 60 credits in total. And if this is you, your non-business electives must be 2000 level or higher. Therefore, you can't take any more 1000 level courses or they will not count towards your non-business electives. If you're finished your third year, you must have completed 90 credits. And if that's the case for you, then you must have 3,000 level courses or higher for your non-business. IBBA, so good news for you is you can take up to 12 credits of non-business electives at the 1,000 level. So if you want to take that voice and speech class in your 4th year, you can totally go for it. And you should know this by now, but just in case, your year level requirements don't apply to your regionally focused courses, so they can also still be 1,000 level. And the good news for both BBA and IBBA students is that year level requirements don't apply to language courses. So if you'd like to take Spanish 1000 in your 4th year, you can do so, and they'll still count towards your non-business electives.
Okay, so now let's get into the specifics for all of the different specializations. So today we're going to be talking about operations management and IT systems, which is OMIS, entrepreneurship, and responsible business. So for OMIS, you have to enroll in at least 12 credits of the following Schulich electives. So I'm just going to pause for a moment if any of you want to take a screenshot and just note this stuff down. So this is a list, and you have to take 4 of these. All of these are 3 credits. You have to take 4 of these courses.
All of this can also be found in the handbook, by the way. This is just making it really easy for you on the slide.
Okay, then that's a minute. So the next one that we're going to be talking about is entrepreneurship. So the same thing, you have to take 12 credits of this list of the following Schulich courses. Again, it's going to be 4 courses because all of these are 3 credits. So it's just really simple, same as OMIS. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, and for responsible business, it is a little bit more complicated. So just bear with me. So the first course that you have to take is a required course, which is MGMT 4300, Corporate Social Responsibility in a Global Context. And you have to take 1 course from the recommended courses. So you have to take at least 1 course from the recommended courses. You can choose to take more, but you have to take a minimum of 3 credits. And you have to take a maximum of 1 of these additional courses here. So these ones are also Schulich electives, but they're just a little different than the recommended courses, which is why you're only allowed to take 1 out of this list. You cannot take a second one, and it won't count towards your specialization. And lastly, you can take a maximum of 1 credit, which is from the approved non-Schulich elective courses list. So that'll be at York and not at Schulich. So you can take 1 of those courses as well. And the list of these courses can be found in the Schulich handbook, because the approved courses do change from year to year. So just check our most updated handbook for that. And so you have to take a total of these 12 credits for responsible business. And now it's time to meet our panelists. So I'm going to get each one of them to introduce themselves to you. So let's start with Hiba.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Hiba. I'm a 2020 graduate. I've specialized in both marketing and responsible business, and I'll be joining American Express this year as a marketing analyst.
Thank you. Let's hear from Abhishan.
Hey everyone, my name is Bishan. I'm also a 2020 graduate, or soon to be graduate because of exchange. I specialized in finance, entrepreneurship, and strategy. And I'll be joining my brother's business, which is Everline Coding and Services.
And last but not least, Priyanka.
Hey guys, so my name is Priyanka, also a 2020 graduate, and I specialized in operations management, so OMIS, and responsible business, and I've started at Bell, so about 2 months now. So yeah.
All right, let's jump to our first question. So very straightforward. What factors influenced you to choose your specialization or specializations with the focus on what we're talking about today? So let's start with Abhishan for this one.
Awesome. So the main reason I chose entrepreneurship in the end was that I grew up really liking entrepreneurship as a whole, like starting new businesses. I did like junior achievement when I was in high school and different programs like that. So that really stirred me towards the entrepreneurship way. I also had a big influence from my brother, who is running like 3 different businesses at the moment. So I had that influence also. And when I looked at the courses for the entrepreneurship specialization, like what we just saw before, is very open, where it's not just entrepreneurship courses. You could also take finance, management, marketing courses all together and get that end up specializing in entrepreneurship. So that's why like that kind of really steered me towards getting an entrepreneurship. And plus, like a lot of the courses end up doubling into other categories. So that's why I was able to do 3 specializations in one.
Thank you. And Priyanka?
Yep. So I chose OMIS based on my first and second year experience at Schulich. So in first and second year, you take stats, and I'm not really a math person, but the idea, like, so we use Excel quite a bit, and that kind of intrigued me. I like playing around with the databases and stuff like that. And I like the fact that you could use data to influence business decisions. I thought it was a good, like, hybrid, I guess. And so moving forward, I took OMIS in second year. And when I was choosing what to specialize in third year, I was kind of looking for something that would build on business analytics, data analytics, something like that, or technical specializations at Schulich. And I felt that with the rise of big data and just information systems in general, I thought it would be a good specialization to get into business analytics and things like that. So that's kind of why I chose OMIS. And I find that, you know, it makes you also employable in a sense because of the way we're moving technology wise. So yeah, that's why.
That's very true. And Hiba?
So I would say I chose responsible business. Apparently it's a really rare specialization. So I've always like loved the idea of corporate social responsibility. And I felt like, you know, the first 2 years of Schulich, whenever I was in class, discussions about CSR were always interesting to me. So I definitely wanted to learn more about it, as well as like knowing the fact that I'm going to be a business leader of tomorrow, hopefully. It's important that I'm also socially responsible, environmentally responsible, and so on. I also felt like this specialization, it's a rare specialization in itself. So not many business schools, you know, offer a specialization like this. And if they are, it's something that's like relatively new. So I thought that this specialization was a way for me to differentiate myself from different candidates. So although I did also specialize in marketing, I thought, you know, this was a cool addition to the marketing specialization that I had. And then as well, like in my last 3 internships, I've worked in like the government, nonprofit, and private sector. I definitely feel like at Schulich, we're really exposed to, you know, all these big private companies, and we don't really discuss like the different sectors out there, such as the nonprofit world or the government world. So, you know, responsible business was like a really great way for me to understand those sectors, as you know, find out business sectors as well.
Perfect. I think that's a really unique reason to choose responsible business. And I think that's a great point that not a lot of other business schools in Canada at least offer responsible business as specialization. And I think Schulich has actually like been ranked as like #1 for its responsible business specialization. So that's really unique. So this is the question that I think everyone wants to hear from you three. So tell us about 2 courses that you took as a part of your specialization that you really enjoyed, and just explain to us what the course overview was like, highlighting any applicable skills that you learned, and any tips that you would provide if our attendees would want to take that course this year or next year. What tips would you give them? And let's start with Avisha.
Awesome. So the 2 courses that I'll talk about will be entrepreneurship and new venture, financing growing ventures, and also personal finance. So these both under felt like finance under finance ended up falling into entrepreneurship. So I'll talk about that one first. So you might think it's just a finance course, but it also falls under this category, which is really cool. And it's just, I think, a great general knowledge that you end up getting from this course. So they talk about, the course overview will be, they'll talk about budgeting, mortgage rates, financing, and all kind of basically anything that you need in real life. We also ran through how to fill out a tax form, which is kind of important at this day and age where you don't really learn that in any kind of school at all right now. So learning kind of like the basics of human, like of your regular life and how you could use these elements to basically help you in the future as a personal level, I think was really, really cool, because everything you're learning about is really like corporations and personal development and stuff like that. So this actually gives you like the math behind figuring out like mortgage rates. So like I was able to help like calculate just my mortgage rate for my parents' house right now and see how long of a term they have left just by them giving me the numbers. So that was like a cool, just fun activity that I did on the side. So there's a lot of real life applications just for like yourself as an individual, from like budgeting, from everything really from this course. So I actually learned probably one of my favorite courses. I also had Daniel Tutt as a prof. He was amazing. Really learned a lot from him. And then secondly, I had the second course would be financing growing ventures. This is probably my favorite course in all 4 years of Schulich. Because just the content itself really intrigued me. So the course overview is basically you learn a lot about VC firms, like venture capital firms and private equity firms. So like the deals that they've done. So it was a lot of case study based, where half the class we do every single week, we'd have a new case study on different ventures. And then for our assignments, what we'd have would be presentations. So we'd have to make presentations based like a slide deck for buying a company. So our final project was, you're interested in buying this company, how would you do the evaluation? How would you market it? How would you get basically investors to pitch money into your company basically? So that was really cool to actually have practical experience and like get a like real review on how you actually did. And then just doing the case study based, I think I learned a lot from case study based, where you go through like past examples of different acquisitions that happened basically. So that was really cool from that. And then finally, Greg had I had Professor Greg as my prof, and he had a lot of real life experience. So he actually worked for a VC firm. So that was able to he was able to on top of what we were already case study, he was able to really bring in his knowledge into what we were talking about. And every week what we do is that we would submit news articles to him. So we'd all go in a class and explain the news articles, what's going on in the world and different stuff like that. So that was really cool.
Awesome, thank you. Let's go to Hiba.
Yeah, just to add on to Abhishan, I also took the same course as Abhishan, and it was a super insightful course. So definitely, take that course. In terms of responsible business, so I'm going to talk about 2 courses today. I'm going to talk about social entrepreneurship, as well as the mandatory course that you have to take, which is corporate social responsibility in a global context. So I would definitely say social entrepreneurship, I took it with Jeffrey Kistruck. It was definitely like one of my favorite courses at Schulich. Definitely super insightful. The lectures were not dry at all. And it was just really, it was just like a really interesting course that, you usually wouldn't take at business school. So just to tell you about the overview of the course. So first project you have to do is like a field interview. So you have to interview 3 social entrepreneurs. So this was super interesting because I actually, got to interview someone from Schulich who is, just graduated, becoming an entrepreneur. I reached out to, 2 different people from all over the world. So it was like really interesting, challenging project that I had to do. You have a midterm exam, and then you have like a final group project and presentation that is centered around working with a social enterprise and like a real social enterprise, like somewhere in Ontario, as well like participation marks. So in terms of like the real life applicable skills I learned from this, I definitely learned more about social enterprise in general. I think I went in not even knowing what it was, and I don't think a lot of us know what it is, but it's a huge growing, business model. I learned a lot about the nonprofit space. I learned about the different business models of social enterprise. So there are 7 different business models of social enterprise, which were super interesting to learn about. As well, the prof does a really good job at bringing in entrepreneurs who are, actually in the field. So you learn a lot of tips and life skills. Like, for example, we had a seminar where a bunch of entrepreneurs of social enterprises came in. So that was super insightful. It also gave me an understanding of, how businesses are set up, they operate and sustain themselves. And I think personally it really helped me like conceptualize the type of field that I wanted to work in, as well, because I know like creating my own social enterprise is something that I want to do like way down the line. And as well, I think it like broke down the misconceptions I had of social enterprise or the nonprofit space, which is like, you know, it's just something that happens in third world countries, or it's, you know, you can't make a lot of money from it, or it's, you know, it's really small or something you do on the side. In terms of like a tip that I would have for this course, I would definitely say like establish a good connection with the prof. He's really, really like well-versed. He has a really good background in social entrepreneurship. His name is Jeffrey Kistruck, and he's socially, I mean, he's super knowledgeable about, you know, social responsibility and what it means to contribute to our communities. So definitely would recommend that course. And then another course that if you are trying to do this specialization, it's mandatory to do is corporate social responsibility in a global context. So the way that this is set out is you have to do a critical reflection paper and personal sustainability report, which is sort of like looking at an organization and seeing how sustainable they are. And then also like checking yourself in terms of like, how do I operate as, you know, a sustainable person, or how do I like understand my ecological footprint. So another project that we had to do was also a debate. So you do a debate report and then you debate against different classmates. So to give you an example, our debate issue was like diversity in the technological space. So that was also really interesting to do research on, really applicable to to real life. So definitely one of the projects that I really enjoyed. As well, I would also say 60% of the work that you do in that class, or the lecture you could say, is discussion based. So if you're someone that enjoys participating, enjoys, you know, listening to the opinions or experiences of other students, I definitely felt that in that class there was a wide range of students that, you know, some really, really advocated for CSR and then others were like completely against it. So it was like really interesting, you know, understanding, you know, where how other people conceptualize the theory of CSR. And then lastly, you do a final essay on a company of your choice. So I did it on Starbucks, and I did a whole sustainability report, and then also, you know, provided my recommendation on how Starbucks could become more sustainable. I would definitely say that this course is really heavy on case analysis. So you really learn about CSR in like a 360 view. You look at it like politics, governments, history, you know, economics, and like the social sphere. So that was really interesting. And it really made me like question the importance of CSR, because, you know, a lot of the class was like playing devil's advocate to understand like, well, why do businesses actually need to be socially responsible, and really conceptualizing the theory of CSR that we like already, you know, sort of accept in business school. And then I think it also really helped me learn about, you know, how our business decisions, like if I, you know, next year I'm going to be working in the workplace, like how my decisions are going to affect, you know, others environmentally, socially, as well as, you know, the community that I'm operating for. And then as well, I really think that it helped give like an external view of the organization, because, you know, you're not just looking at, you know, the internal gears of an organization, but you're looking at how it affects the community, the consumers, everyone involved, even the suppliers. So that was a really, really interesting lens to look at as well. In terms of like any tips that I would have for this course, I would definitely say like participate as much as possible, because your grade is really heavily based on your participation and you learn more that way. So that's corporate social responsibility in a nutshell.
Thank you, Hiba. That was so thorough. I feel like I already know like the ins and outs of those two courses, so I think it's really helpful. And lastly, let's hear from Priyanka.
So for OMIS, the courses have a reputation of being more technical. Oh, am I lagging? I'm not sure. All right. Yeah, so for OMIS, oh. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so so for OMIS, the courses have a reputation of being like more technical. So I'm going to cover two courses that I took back in third year. The first is known as to most people as the VBA course. So it's called Spreadsheet Based Decision Support System, something like that. That's OMIS 3670. Basically, you get an overview of VBA and Excel. So VBA exists for a lot of the Microsoft Office suites, and it's basically like the code that runs behind it. So you learn it for Excel, which is a really great like tool because it's a great thing to put on your resume to say you know VBA. I know that like it's not like a legitimate like not legitimate, but it's not like one of those big programming softwares like Python or Java, but it's really good like if you want an introduction to programming and just getting a basic overview. So this course is designed to sort of teach you to navigate VBA and Excel. So you learn like basic like commands and things, and you explore Excel in ways that you probably wouldn't have used before. So I always liked playing around in Excel, but I never knew like the programming behind it. And I think this course offered a very good like introduction, I guess. If you're not a coder, it's a really good course to look into, and it's a really great skill for, again, resume and things like that. You can speak to that in interviews that you do later on. In terms of the way the course is structured, so it's very there's no like midterm or final, which is great for me because I don't really like exams, as I don't think most people do. But so there's 3 assignments, and there's a group project at the end. So it's very much like it's not really about the content that you kind of memorize and regurgitate, right? So I feel like you learn more from doing assignments, right? So that's kind of why the course is based like that. It's spaced out pretty evenly, so you have time to kind of pick up the concepts and then try to replicate them in the assignment. And I think the most important takeaway for things like with a programming kind of background is that you're shown the concepts in class, and the prof is really knowledgeable. He knows a lot. So if you do go and like go to office hours with him and talk to him outside of your class time, you could really learn a lot from him. And basically the idea is you are shown the concepts in the class, but the assignment kind of builds on further from that. So you kind of have to think about the problem in a very logical way. And I guess it really like expands your critical thinking and logical thinking, which is something like you don't, as a business student, you don't get to do a lot of that because if the courses are not so much more technical. So it really like expands on that sort of skill set, which is, I think, great for the workplace. And in terms of coding, it's a really great intro to that. So that's what I'll say about that course. For the next course I'm going to talk about, it's known as the Python course at Schulich. I think the name has changed now, looking at the Schulich website, but it used to be called Models and Applications and Operational Research. I think it's called Prescriptive Analytics now, but that's OMIS 4000. And basically, so for those of you that have taken OMIS 2010, I'll just give you an overview. So OMIS 2010 is the very first like operations course that you're required to take in your second year. And that kind of goes over operations and like models you can do with that. So basically, you would look at, and it mainly focuses on linear models. So you're kind of mathematically modeling business situations. And so all the models will be linear, and you kind of like do like algebra and things like that, but you also learn the theory behind some things. So for example, like if I recall correctly, like things like waiting lines and queues like that, like how do stores plan out their waiting lines so that customer wait times are reduced? Or for example, how to balance your inventory and the resources you have to complete projects at a low cost, right? So things like that you don't really think about. It's all like expressed in a mathematical way that kind of makes sense if you really think about the content. So that's kind of what you cover in OMIS 2010, so your required course. And then for OMIS 4000, it's an extension of that. So basically you like cover and review all your OMIS 2010 content in like the first 2 classes or so. And then it moves on to more complex models. So, and these models would become nonlinear, right? So in a real business situation, it's not just like ax plus by equals c. It's not simple like that. There's a lot of constraints and a lot of other factors and variables that happen. So you need to use different models and more complex models to model that. So this kind of goes into representing real life business situations. And in terms of the software technology that you use, so in OMIS 2010, and you can easily solve that in Excel. in OMIS 4000, the idea is to build on that. So you'll use Excel Solver and Excel for the very first part of the course, but then after that, you're encouraged to use Python, because Python can actually digest all that data and give you a proper solution with a non-linear situation. So you don't really learn Python per se, because you're expected to kind of learn Python through this like online course. So what happened was that served as a participation mark, and you did the online Python course and gave him the certificate to show that you kind of know the basics. But then your application of Python within that course is kind of based on the assignment. So it's like a very conceptual, and it's like, how do you model these particular situations? And so that's kind of your extent of Python in that sense. So that course, I won't say it's easy. It's not one of the easier courses, but it's a really good insight into operation models and things like that. So it really lets you think about the business scenarios in very different ways, and it's so useful to say that you have Python experience, because a lot of jobs they like to see that you have some sort of experience with different kinds of programs. And if you don't end up taking computer science courses on your own time, doing it through school and doing it through this kind of business through a business course is a great way to have it on your resume. And at the final project for this course, it was pretty cool. So it was a real life situation. So it's not like in an enclosed space, like it's not just some random project you're doing. It actually has value. So for us, it was there's a small town in Northern Ontario, and they were kind of looking to revamp their whole transportation system. And what we had to do, so we were given all this information about their current routes and everything, their ticketing systems and things like that. So we had to just pick one aspect of it and improve it. So build a full model and replicate the model on how we would make the whole system more efficient. And so it's kind of applying the mathematical models that you learn in class and kind of using it in a real life situation, which is kind of what you do in the workplace anyway. So I think, and then for our presentations, the people didn't get to make it in person, but they did Skype in. So they got to see our actual, they got to give feedback and actually react to our models. And it was kind of like a real workplace dynamic. So I think that was really interesting. And it was it was one of the more challenging courses, but definitely worth it in terms of, really understanding operations from a mathematical perspective and actually using software to create results. So yeah.
I just want to say thanks for being so thorough. I think that's really helpful for the students that are listening. So the next question is, what career pathway were you hoping to follow with your specialization? And does it align with what you're doing right now? So let's start with Hiba for this one.
All right. So I didn't really primarily choose my specialization to become involved in a specific field or job. I knew I wanted to do marketing. I just thought, responsible business was an additional touch that I could add. And, I didn't really go in thinking I want to get a responsible business specialization. I just sort of looked at the course and I'm like, yeah, these courses are sort of what I'm into. So it was, really interesting in that way. I definitely feel it has had an impact on my career in a way, and it's definitely had an impact on who I am in terms of how I make decisions, how I look at things. In fact, when I was interviewing for the role that I have right now, I did have responsible business on my resume, and that sort of created a discussion with the interviewer. And she's like, okay, so what is social enterprise? Tell me about that. So I thought that was it's sort of a way to differentiate yourself and sort of add a little spice to whatever else you're already doing. And in terms of whether it aligns with what I'm doing right now, I think we can all agree that, CSR or big corporations being socially responsible, you've probably seen in recent weeks, is insanely important. And there's a lot of even as I was working at Amex last year, I was working on I was working on a marketing campaign which is called Shop Small, which is basically It's a program to encourage Amex card members to shop small, meaning to shop at smaller merchants and smaller businesses, and in turn, American Express will reward our card members. So that in itself is, an initiative that Amex took to become socially responsible. So, on my last day during my final presentation, I sort of had to provide like new campaigns or new techniques that Amex could do. So I definitely like used whatever I learned in class in terms of like social enterprise, CSR, to sort of like pitch the ideas to like directors and managers. So that was something that was really cool. So I definitely think like responsible business, you're not going to go into the specific field of responsible business, but it definitely will help you learn about important stuff within the organization. And as well, like I didn't get to take these courses, but if you're someone that, doesn't want to just, limit themselves to the private sector, there's courses like government and business and nonprofit management that the responsible business specialization offers that could sort of help you conceptualize like maybe, if you do want to work in different sectors.
Thank you. Priyanka?
Yep. Okay. So what I planned to do in undergrad was if I didn't get a job in fourth year, my plan was to do the Masters of Business Analytics. So that's the MBAN, because I knew I always wanted to do something that combined data and business. So fortunately, I did an internship at Bell my third year, and then I signed back. So that's where I am right now. And so Bell is a huge organization, but right now I'm on the BI side in customer operations. BI meaning business intelligence, and it sounds very like, to me, like before going in I had no idea what it was. It just sounded fancy, so I was like, oh, it's cool. But it really did sound like business analytics to me, so that's kind of why I went into it. And it is the more so a lot of Schulich students are at Bell, and there is a more like business side role, so business side roles, and that's called like moat, so that's like marketing, operations, and applied technology. So like typically I would fit better there as a business student. However, I did want that technical data aspect to my job, so that's kind of why I'm on the BI side. And you'll find like I find that I'm working with like engineers, and like the other grads are like engineers, computer science people, so they're like definitely more technical, but having the business aspect does help in terms of contextualizing bigger picture problems. So in terms of what I do now, so the Bell program kind of works in rotations. So you get 2 rotations, then you're expected to land in a full-time role, or you can leave. So I'm in my first rotation right now, and I work on the campaigns side. So campaigns is basically just a fancy term for any like outbound communications that Bell sends to like any customer. So whether that be email, SMS, whatnot. And so it's an operations role. And so I'm very new to the role, but basically what happens, or what I do as part of my day to day, is kind of like investigations. So sometimes the customer data will be missing, or you have to deep dive and look into problems, or just you get requests from other departments to like what's up with this, or find the data for this, etc. So in terms of like analyzing data and actually like working with it, I find that having some sort of background in my OMIS courses was helpful. So I don't use any of the programs per se that I did at Schulich. So I didn't use VBA or Python, but I did use so now we use SQL or SQL in Teradata, which is kind of like querying. But I know that there's a new a new OMIS course which actually teaches you SQL or SQL, so that should be pretty useful for those who are coming in or choosing OMIS. And another thing, so I did my last OMIS course on Exchange. It was like an analytics course, and I used Tableau and SAS there. So Bell also uses these programs as well, so I found that pretty helpful. So in terms of like your programs may not, like the softwares you use may not be the exact same as your job, but I think what's more important is the logical or critical thinking aspect of it, or just like understanding the way problems are solved with these softwares that kind of translate over just whatever you use in your workplace. So I think that's what was the most important takeaway for me. But yeah, that's just a basic overview, but yeah.
And finally, Vishen.
Awesome. So with mine, I did not really know what I wanted to do kind of with my specialization. I really end up taking courses that I kind of just liked. And it kind of end up happening that I got like kind of like 3 specializations in the end. But all the courses I ended up taking were just courses that like sound interesting and where I felt that I could learn a lot from. I messaged a lot of people ahead of time. I posted on like the Strong Crew about the courses that I wanted to take and see like what people had reviews about them. So that's what kind of led me to the courses that I ended up taking. With the specialization, I end up like, well, my end goal would be to be working for like a VC firm, like a venture capitalist firm, just because I find a lot of interest with that. After doing like mergers and acquisitions and like financing growing ventures, I think that that was really something that I lean towards. And this is kind of like a stepping stone. So what I'm doing right now is that basically I'm a finance director for my brother's startup. He kind of owns 3 different businesses right now. One's a line painting, that's the Everline. One's a property maintenance. And then the final one is a renovation company. So he's doing all of that. So the thing is, even though my title is like finance director, I kind of do all aspects. That's one of the best things about I think working about a startup, is that you really just do a bit of everything in your role, because realistically in our back end, there's only 3 employees that are working back end, and then there's like 30 to 50 employees working actually like doing production, because this is a real like the job, the business, the industry that we're in is really like hands-on. So you have to hire a lot of people to actually do the physical jobs for it. So those are the other people. And then you have back-end people that are just running like the finances and stuff. So that's what I'm doing. So in my role, it really helped learning about all these other all these other courses. So I took a marketing course in the end. I took OMIS VBA, and that actually used now to help my brother create a system using VBA to automate a lot of the calculations and stuff like that. So that was actually really cool. With my entrepreneurship, I guess, specialization, it kind of does in the end, because I use a lot of the personal finance and I kind of grow it a little bit more to like a startup level, where it's not a huge corporation where you need to focus about, but like really just startups. You're only working with like tens to hundred thousands of dollars only. So that's really cool. And then just working, I guess, as a whole with like you working with marketing. So right now we're outsourcing our marketing to another individual. So I have to create the budget for that, depending on how many leads, how much customer estimates that he could produce from that. And now that we're switching from like residential areas to commercial, so now we're targeting, we're going to big businesses and trying to hit big businesses. So like doing that kind of transition, and as a finance director, like calculating, oh, how much do we want to focus on in like the residential area compared to like the commercial area. Like you have to do all those kind of calculations to see which one's the best fit. And I think one thing that really helped a lot with this role was that we just, like my brother just purchased the Everline franchisee title. So purchasing that, we actually did a lot of calculations to see if it was worth purchasing, to see. So like we actually did the investment analysis, seeing should we actually invest in this, to see if we could actually use, we could actually make a lot of money in this basically, and how like what kind of cost it involves, because if you're doing line painting, you have to get certain machinery. So you have to see all the startup costs with that, and then see how quickly you could make back your money. So like how much we invested, how quickly we could make that back in like say a year or like 2 years, and then see how we could continue to grow that. So I think that really helped a lot, and that was really probably my favorite projects to date in my role that I did, was figuring out to actually purchase this business. But I think overall it actually helped a lot, just because you get so much general knowledge and about almost about everything, that it kind of helps with the startup, because you're doing a little bit of everything what you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next question is, we want to know, what is the one thing that you wish you had known about the specialization or this industry that you were unaware of during your time at Schulich or before you took the courses in your specialization? Like, did you have any like misconceptions about it? Just like tell us about that. So let's start with Priyanka this time.
Sure. So I guess 2 things I can touch on. So the first is that I didn't realize this till I went on exchange to a different school, but so Schulich calls it OMIS, right? So Operations Management and Information Systems, and it's kind of a loaded term. So I was initially confused as to what it really all meant. And I found out like at my exchange school, so they kind of separate into two things. So operations management goes under, it's a more theory kind of thing where it's more like project management and about logistics. So there is a course that Schulich calls supply chain management, and that's kind of different inventory management systems, and you'll even like learn about like logistics. So even like the trucks that transport goods to your house and things like that, how does that of it? That is covered separately at that exchange school that I went to. And then information systems was something completely different. So that was kind of more what I wanted to do in terms of analytics and looking at data and putting together models that represent business situations and kind of combining the technical aspect too. So at Schulich, it's kind of combined. And I think that combination confused me at first, but now I kind of realized that the theory doesn't really make sense without the back end. Like you need the math, or not even just math, but like the technical part of it to support that, because a lot of these systems and theories that currently exist, they wouldn't exist without the kind of data that supports it behind. So I guess that's kind of what I learned by coming out of the specialization. And another thing is like going into it, I didn't really know what OMIS was like back in second year when we first took it. And when you do the specialization, you kind of see that it's a lot more like, it leads in a lot more to software and like using different programs and software. And I'm not really a programmer myself. Like I took one coding course like back in high school and I was like never again, and then here I am like now doing the same thing. So basically it's like I wasn't unaware of this, but it was more so like it was like a pleasant surprise, I guess, in the sense that you're kind of forced to learn these like programming languages. And even if you're not the best programmer, I think this is something my OMIS 4000 prof said, like even you don't have to be the best programmer or the best coder, because there's already people that like specialize in computer science and are actually set out to do just the coding part. But I think the fact that you guys, what he said to us was, we have the business knowledge and I guess the business acumen to kind of like put it all together. And that's something that doesn't just come from, like that's something you have to acquire. It's not just something that, that's something that is unique to us as business students. And I think by leveraging both of those things, you kind of understand more about the bigger picture and are able to actually contribute in a more meaningful way. So I think that's kind of what I learned coming out of the specialization. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's hear from Abhishek.
Awesome. So I guess one thing I didn't realize was that you kind of use all aspects of what you learned in the first 2 years, especially in like, I guess the startup world, because I didn't really know about this at first. And like entrepreneurship, like a lot of the courses they could end up taking are like new venture creations, which are a lot of like the startup world and area. So I guess that's where like entrepreneurship really specializes in. So like the first 2 years, I genuinely didn't like as much because I had to take those courses, but I generally loved taking them in the end because I learned just a little bit of everything from every single like kind of every kind of specialty that like Schulich makes you do, but that helped me towards getting the jobs that like the job that I have right now technically, where like I'm using all of those little aspects towards this startup. So like being able to do that with this like the specialization, I had no clue. Like I generally did not like the first 2 years, but then after now, like I'm like so grateful I did that in the end. And I think that now that you guys have that background, if you're in first or second year, you guys could apply, even if it's not paid, you guys could apply for like startup jobs, like growth interns, where they like, you could work throughout the year, working like 15, 20 hours, working for a startup that like, you'll just gain a lot of knowledge from that and a lot of experience they could use to get you other jobs in the future, even if you're not paid right now. I think it's great experience. And I think that's probably one of the things I was unaware of during my undergrad. And I wish I did in my first or second year, because like the knowledge that you get from Schulich in the first 2 years is actually pretty valuable for a business as a whole. So being able to work in all kind of sections would be very beneficial at a startup.
Thank you. And let's hear from Hiba.
All right. In terms of what I wish I knew about this specialization, I feel like I knew this going in, but I think it would be good to reiterate to like whoever is listening. Most of the courses within this specialization are a lot more theory based. So they're not as technical as something like OMIS or finance. So I think, you know, just to know as a Schulich student, like it's good to have like a balance of, you know, those technical skills as well as, you know, those courses that focus more on theory. So definitely, I would say that. And then in terms of, I'm repeating myself, but I wish I had, you know, the space to take more courses like government and business and management of the nonprofit sector. Because I went on exchange, I didn't have, you know, the course space to take those courses. So I definitely wish I had taken those courses and I was exposed to, you know, more profs, because I do find that profs, any of the profs that I had related to the specialization were super knowledgeable about the field and really had really good insights that I was interested in as well. So I would definitely say, you know, have a good read through of all the courses available and see what you'd like to take. And then just like one word of advice would be like, try to take courses that you're interested in and not just like, so you get your specialization. Like, I need 4 courses for finance, I'm going to take 4 courses. Like, I think it's great to get your specialization, but it's like, since you're paying for these courses, it's your education. Like, take courses that you're interested in, or courses that, you know, you have like you're well-rounded in terms of like technical skills and you know, theory-based knowledge.
I think you make a really good point. Another piece of advice would be to take courses that maybe don't necessarily boost your GPA, but one that you learn a lot out of. GPA is the only thing that recruiters look at, which ties into the next question of what your personal recruitment process was like. So, Hiba, we're actually going to start with you again. So, could you tell us about your journey with American Express?
Yeah, of course. So I actually worked as an intern at American Express last summer. It was really interesting because it was a quite interesting experience for me because I didn't really take the role of an intern. I sort of got placed into the role of an analyst, like an analyst was on maternity leave. So I came into the role of an intern. I had to do 2 interviews going in for American Express. So actually, let me start from the beginning. The way I found out about American Express, I think I found out about it through a YMA conference that I went through. I talked to a couple of recruiters there, handed my business card, and like next thing you know, I got an email. So definitely, you know, networking is key. From there, I went in, I had 2 30-minute interviews, very simple, like marketing-based interviews, you know, tell me about yourself, tell me about a time. So the process was quite simple, and then I worked in the summer taking over the role of an analyst. I was on maternity leave, so it was really cool at American Express because I wasn't really handled as an intern. I was like from the start, like, you know, had a number of projects to do. I actually had to tell my manager, like, you're giving me too much work. So it was a really like, you know, really good internship where I had a lot of accountability and, you know, business decisions that I wanted to make. And then basically after that, after the summer ended, I worked part-time in a different role as I was doing school as well. So that was something that was really nice. And then I just signed on before the summer was over. And so I'm going to start hopefully in the next month as soon as they figure out the online onboarding process. So that's sort of how the recruitment process was. I'd love to like chat more. If you guys have any questions, like you can message me on LinkedIn or Facebook if you're interested in working at American Express. So yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you. And we're going to go a little bit more of an unconventional recruitment process with Abishan.
So yeah, with my brother, like people would say like my job was kind of given, but I kind of had to prove myself. I think because like, especially when you work with family, it's kind of really hard because they know your whole background, and like everything about you. So I kind of had to prove that I was kind of right for the job because he was hiring and I wasn't fully yet done school yet. And then plus I was going on exchange. So I actually started like basically working for him last year. So I wasn't fully done school and I was going on exchange. So he was very hesitant on hiring me per se, and putting me under payroll. So I kind of had to show what my experience was and like with the courses that I had. So I talked about my BBA experience and how I could create a dashboard for him using Excel, showing him that kind of experience, and also just like all the courses that I've taken and all the knowledge that I've learned as a whole. I kind of had to like just prove myself, which was not like a formal interview per se. We actually sat down and like we had to, it was a really weird process because he was family. So it wasn't like any other interview like I had. So it wasn't like behavioral questions like that, but it was really just a lot of technical. So because he wanted to know that I could be able to perform the job that he was like looking for. So I would say it was a lot more technical based, because it was family, and like we kind of had to put like our emotions aside because we know each other for so long. And it was really just fully technical based where we asked me lots of questions where he was also learning, because then that's why he also wanted someone else, because he doesn't have like a business background at all. He was more like, he was very heavy on sales and like the whole starting up a whole business kind of aspect. So you know a little bit about everything. So he wanted someone that could come in and like basically specialize in the finance department and help him get down his numbers and making sure that like all like the future investment, especially like that really helped like me talking about my experience with like the courses that I took with growing ventures and everything like that, and being able to do an analysis to see if it was worth buying that kind of that business like Everline, really kind of helped me get kind of secure that job basically in the end.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that that first part you said, sometimes working with your family doesn't mean that everything's given. It actually means you have to work twice as hard sometimes. So Priyanka, what was your recruitment process like? You did mention you interned with Bell before you signed. Can you talk to us about how that internship recruitment went?
Yeah, for sure. So this was in my third year, and Bell comes to Schulich a lot. They really like Schulich students, so it's great. It's an easy way to kind of get in. But so I think I found the Bell like jobs posted online before they came for their recruiting session. So I think I applied to the BI business intelligence one first. That was for their summer intern position. And then I went to the Schulich event and they kind of talked about the different roles. So they don't only have stuff in customer operations, they also have stuff like in finance and HR. So if you're interested in those departments as well, they hire for them. And basically, like I don't really network a lot, which is bad. So you should network. But like I really tried that day. So I talked to like two people in field operations, so not customer operations. They're two separate things. And if you want to know the difference, customer operations is kind of dealing with the customer side, and field operations is dealing with the technicians that kind of go around to people's houses and stuff like that. So it's just slightly different sides of the business. But yeah, so they have moat and BI positions for both. And so I talked to a couple recruiters and then just applied online like anyone else. And then I got called for an interview around the fall. So it was like November, December 2018. Yeah. And so for the moat internship, so if you're interested in a more like business side role, what they do for the interview is a case. So you have to do a case, and it's one of those IB cases that you guys do, like you'll do it in courses that you like too. So it's one of those IB cases, and you do a presentation, and then they ask you behavioral questions, so typical. And then so I did that for my field operations interview, but that was also a BI one. So they also asked, like they had a technical portion as well where they had a couple questions on Excel, and you had to like graph some stuff and write some SQL queries, which like you don't have to know all of it going in. They just want to see where you're kind of at. So I didn't get that field operations role, but I did for my customer operations role. It was just purely, so there's no case, but it was just purely like 1 hour Excel. They gave you an Excel workbook, and then they had like the different tabs had the different questions on it, and you had to just complete as many as you can in that hour. So it was kind of a time crunch. I think that was the biggest thing. And like it was just like the questions kind of ranged from like math questions. So one was like calculating the area or something like that. The other one was something was like a logic kind of question, some thinking questions. Some of them were just like pure Excel, to just like take this data and then like graph it. What are the trends? And then so in the interview process of the next hour, they kind of like, they just go through each of the questions with you, and you kind of present your findings and what you did for each one, or your thought process. If you didn't finish, they don't care. It's kind of like, what would you have done? And then they ask a couple behavioral questions. And overall it went pretty well. Like honestly, like I know like a lot of the interns that I met during that summer that got hired, they were like, we didn't finish the questions like fully either. I don't think it's about like how like great you are with your technicals, because Excel is not a really complicated thing to use. It's more so like what are your findings, or what can you do with it, or what inferences can you draw from it. I think that that's where your business knowledge kind of comes in, right? So it's like kind of drawing inferences. And then so yeah, so I joined the internship in the summer, and that was for like from May to August, and it was really fun. So Bell has a really like established internship over the years. So there's lots of cohorts of grads that have since joined the program, so they're really organized, and it was super fun. They had like lots of outings, and the internship was like, it was very like group work based. So I'm kind of like introverted, so I don't like a lot of the people at Bell that are hired. They're very extroverted, and they're very people like they love people person, I guess. So they love talking to people and stuff like that. So they keep you very engaged, and they're really nice. A lot of them from Ivy, some from Schulich, you know, a couple universities around. And so you got 2 consulting projects to do. So one was a smaller one, and you kind of present that to another team, like a smaller team. So that was basically it was about like virtual training. So they have like call center agents in the Philippines, and we had to like come up with a couple recommendations to improve a part of that. And then we had a bigger consulting project, which was spread out over the 4 months. And that was kind of like each like group was assigned a different topic, and you had to like present your recommendations to like the head of customer operations and his whole team. So it was like very like direct like exec exposure. And honestly, like the group environment was super fun. And you also, oh yeah, another thing was we had to do like call centers. So I didn't know that going in, but you have to actually like be a call center agent and like take the calls. So I worked at the Virgin office, and it was the Virgin mobile center. So I was like acting as a Virgin call agent. So customers would call in, and I would like check their data overage, or like you know, like update do a hardware upgrade for them and stuff like that. So you're not like, they say it counts as part of whether you're signed back on or not, but it's really just for you to understand the customer experience. And I think that was super cool. So now working in a more like analyst role, you kind of understand like, how phone plans work, how customers work, things like that. So really experiencing stuff on the front lines was super helpful, even though I didn't realize it at the time. And as for how I got into now, so basically I signed back, and then so I was supposed to start September of this year, but because of COVID, they kind of asked us if we wanted to start earlier. So I opted to start in May and work in my first rotation till next year. So basically, most of the grads are taken back as grads into the full-time program, but there are a couple of grads that have joined in just as full-timers, and so they do a condensed version of the internship this summer, and then they join us together in September. So yeah, overall, like I'm not trying to like promote Bell or anything like that, but I will say like their grad program is really cool. If you want to experience different sides of the business, they have like the 2 rotations really help with like exposing you to different areas and kind of picking and choosing what you want to do. And then you're not expected to land right away into a position. So it's very open and free. And yeah, that was my experience so far. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. So after recruitment, we want to know if you've noticed that there is any unique rewards associated with your specialization that you might have experienced either at work or just in your life in general. Like, have you noticed that you have like some unique benefit from doing that specific specialization? So let's start with Hiba this time.
For sure. In terms of a unique reward, I'm trying to think back. So in American Express, during the summer internship, we had to do sort of like this intern project. So you would pick like an issue in the organization, could be any issue you wanted, and you speak to, you know, if you want to speak to different markets, if you want to speak to managers, directors of the organization, to sort of create this whole business plan of how you would tackle that issue. So and then at the end, we would present to directors or managers about that are actually experienced or work on that specific, line of business. So in terms of that, I think, having the idea of social enterprise as well as, CSR in the back of my head really helped me, conceptualize like a marketing campaign that we created that was based around basically being environmentally friendly. So definitely, I thought like this was something interesting that I applied to the real workplace, and think that's sort of like a unique reward that I sort of the knowledge that I got from taking the courses that I did through my responsible business specialization.
That's awesome. I think like it must have helped you just to have that sort of mindset and give you a broader perspective on the business as well. That's great. Let's hear from Abisha now.
So I guess my reward would be so I actually joined JDCC. Just for people that don't know, it's basically a like nationwide like case competition where you face like 12 other schools from across Canada, and we do like this central like all over Ontario and like Quebec and Halifax. But basically, I did the entrepreneurship category for that competition for academics. So it was a 3-hour pressure tank. And in my first year, I did it was in third year. So I was just taking like the courses that I really kind of wanted in entrepreneurship. So I learned a lot from that. And that was able to help me kind of with my pitch. And then even when I went to fourth year, I ended up doing it again in entrepreneurship. And I guess with all the knowledge at that point, I finished all my courses that I could at Schulich for that competition. And I think a lot of like the courses that actually helped me, like one of the courses that really helped me was the entrepreneurship and new venture creation, because for this we had for this competition we basically had to make a pitch for a company that we wanted to do. So that kind of really helped me gain the basic knowledge that we needed for the financials behind it and everything like that. So that gave me a lot of knowledge for that specific competition. So that was really rewarding because then I learned a lot from that and also just from like other people from that. So I guess like from the specialization especially, like that helped with the competition a lot and it was a lot of fun.
Love the UCC. And lastly, let's hear from Priyanka.
She might be frozen.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, there we go.
Oh. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So one thing, I guess a lot of like, I mean, as a business student, you're kind of not like people think you're not as well versed in the technical side of it, and that's the kind of reputation that Schulich sometimes has. But I think doing something like OMIS exposes you to different skill set, which I think is pretty useful in the workplace. So you go in with a little bit more technical experience, which is like it's nothing to bash on theory because that's great as well, because you learn a lot. Definitely, like without the theory you can't really learn many of the concepts that exist. But from in terms of completing and doing tasks, especially like for what I do in terms of BI, it's very execution based. So it's kind of it's a bit dependent on what you can do in software and things like that. So the more you're well versed in different languages, or not even coding, but let's just say like things like Excel, if you're familiar with software, it gives you an edge in terms of what you can offer. And even if you don't know things, I think having exposure to stuff like that helps you with learning new things. So for example, like in my workplace, like I never used SQL before, or like Teradata, which is the data, like, which is what is used to like pull all the data. But like like having a background in like not a super like comprehensive background in coding, but just a little bit of exposure kind of helps you, like it becomes less intimidating to like play with the software and figure it out. And you kind of and a lot of the work I do is like investigation stuff, as I mentioned before. So just being able to think about what data do I need versus what I don't need when there's so much to pull is also interesting. And I think OMIS kind of builds that critical thinking, logical thinking, as I was saying, to kind of help you with that. So that's kind of what I would say is the reward.
Okay, and another very popular question that we did get was, apart from the required courses for your specialization, did you find any electives, whether at Schulich or York, that helped either A, further your education and career, or B, you just enjoyed taking? So let's start with Abhishan for this one.
So yeah, I had kind of two courses I really liked. The first one was conflict and negotiation. I think that was also one of my favorite courses in all of Schulich. Just because like you're doing real life like negotiations in class every single week, and then you learn the theory behind it also. So you learn theory for the first half, and then you use that basically in practical when you're like negotiating with your fellow classmates. I mean, there's no real incentive in the end to like kind of like really win the negotiation kind of way. But it's also just competition that you build within your classroom. So that was kind of fun. So you learned a lot, and like you need conflict negotiation in like basically anything you do in the world, and being able to like negotiate, even like just going down to like some place and buying something, you could try potentially negotiating, or when you get your new job contract, you want to be able to negotiate for better terms for yourself, right? So I think all of those kind of aspects really helped a lot, and it was just a fun course to generally have, and like you do a report at the very end showing like your growth over the time period, and how you kind of change with the course. And then the second course would definitely be the VBA course, just because like it's a lot of technical that you use, and then putting that on your resume itself was really, really good. Like a lot of people always be like, oh, like if you're looking at very like a lot of technical job applications, a lot of them ask for VBA knowledge or like Excel, like excessive Excel knowledge. So learning VBA was also like an extremely beneficial. It was a hard course, but you learned a lot. Like I learned a lot from that, and I will use that in the future 100%, you know.
Okay, Hiba?
Yes. Okay, so some courses I would say, one course would be the one that Priyanka talked about, the OMIS 4000. So the one about Python. I definitely feel like, you know, that's a really good technical skill to have, and definitely will differentiate you from different candidates. And although it is like a more challenging course, the prof that I had was really upbeat, interesting, and really helped us understand the content, and really helpful as well. So I definitely say that course. Another course that I would say would also be marketing research with David Rice specifically, because I love that prof. It was just a really interesting course to take, super interactive, especially if you're someone that's going into marketing. I think it taught me a lot of useful research tactics, because, you know, a lot of marketing, I would say like, you know, a good chunk of it, like 40% of marketing is like research, especially if you're working in a place where you have to figure out like new marketing campaigns or so on. You need to have the research to back it. So I definitely feel like marketing research was a really good course that I took, and it wasn't too lecture heavy at all as well.
Thank you. And finally, Priyanka.
Yep. So I also took conflict and negotiations. It was really cool. It's actually very different from a lot of the courses I usually take. So if you want a more like interactive, like discussion-based class, it's definitely like very like more chill and like very fun actually. And for me, even though like, and I think it's a great like build like if you're improves your oral communication skills. I think like I don't talk much, so it was a really like different course to take. Another course I really enjoyed, this is like, I think my all-time favorite Schulich course is management consulting. So that's management 4800. I took it in my like final semester of fourth year. It was a really great way to end undergrad. And it was with Graham Deans, who also teaches like some MBA courses, I think. And he's actually a partner at EY, so he's super experienced. And so, yeah, I didn't really know much about consulting before and never really considered it. But kind of like, I mean, it's such a great course to take because it like Avishan was talking about before, like combining different like specializations and things together. Management consulting really did that. So it's a little bit of everything, and you're kind of solving problems, right? So you're given a problem from the business, and it's a very case-based course. So you're looking at it from an accounting perspective, so numbers, but also operations, also marketing, just considering all these different things. And it kind of really like sums up your business, your academic undergraduate career. And the prof, he's like the best prof I've ever had, I feel. He's very helpful. He's super knowledgeable. But he's never like condescending about the way he approaches the class. Like he always takes your opinions into consideration, even though he knows way more. And he's always like, he's overextended himself to help us out and super invested in our development. And I think like, so like he literally took like extra classes or gave us like extra sessions like outside of regular class time, just to like help us with solving consulting problems and thinking about how you would approach different things. And another, like at the very end of the class, he even offered like, offered a whole bunch of things. He's like, if you need like career help or resume help, or if you guys start a business and you need someone to be your shareholder, come and talk to me. So he just offered himself like a lot, and it was really cool. I definitely kept in touch with him after, so I connected with him on LinkedIn. It was really nice. So definitely would recommend that course. I think it's like mainly for fourth years, but we had a couple of third years in that class. So really, really good course I took. And yeah, so totally recommend that.
Alrighty, well, it's time to move on to our Q&A session. So now is the time for anyone who has a question. You can type it in the chat box, and either Mina or I will call on you, and you can unmute yourself and ask whichever panelist you've directed your question to.
Don't be shy, just put them in the chat.
I think you three were just super thorough. We don't have any questions.
Okay, there is a question for Hiba from Hiba.
From Hiba, okay. All right, Hiba, let me answer your question. What was the name of the Responsible Business course? So I recommended two, corporate social responsibility in a global context, which is if you're trying to get a responsible business specialization, that's the one you have to take in order to get the specialization. And the second course was social entrepreneurship.
Okay, so as we're waiting for more questions, I'll just ask a follow-up question to that one. So one of the courses that you recommended was the mandatory course. So if you were to recommend one apart from that mandatory course, what would it be? Or of an elective?
So in order to get my specialization, I would also say it's not very hard to get a responsible business specialization, because after you take that mandatory course, a lot of the different courses I was going to take anyway. So I took international marketing, I took social entrepreneurship, as well as conflicts and negotiation. So I definitely say conflicts and negotiation was a really insightful course as well to take. And like, everyone, Abish and Priyanka reiterated, it's definitely a course like as a business student, like very useful to take. So I would definitely recommend that one.
Thank you. And so Tanvi has a question for Priyanka. Who is your prof for management consulting?
Yes, his name is Graham Deans. So Graham is spelled Graeme, and Deans, Deans.
All of our students should be well versed with Professor Deans. He does teach MGMT 1000. So Tanvi, if you're in first year, you are going to have him very soon. If not, you would have already had him. Is there anyone else with any questions for our panelists? I'm actually really surprised. But then again, you were super thorough in every single question we asked. I guess as we wait, I will ask another question to each of you. How did you know which courses to choose for your specialization? So you mentioned the ones you took, but what was kind of your thinking process into which courses you took? Abhishan, do you have some advice?
Yeah, I would say like definitely ask older people, look at like the course outline, see what you actually just want to take, because there's a wide selection, like, especially like if you look at the entrepreneurship one, you had a wide selection, like there's no mandatory one you have to take, so you could just take any four of those. So even like Hibbo was close to specializing in entrepreneurship. Like the two courses that you recommended were both entrepreneurship under the entrepreneurship category too. So I would just say like ask up years if you have Deshaun's crew is also a valuable asset. I think like putting your comments in there, putting your questions in there about the courses, and like which profs take and everything like that. A lot of people will give you really honest answers about their experience, which I felt was really, really cool, learning about that. And also ask for course outlines. That will just give you like the kind of topics that you're going to discuss, and see if you like have interest in that, to see if you actually want to be able to learn that.
Okay, we have a question for Priyanka. What are the other OMIS courses that you took?
Yep. So. Yep. Okay. Am I lagging?
Just a little
Okay.
bit enough. You're good.
Okay. Okay. So the other one I took, so I took 3 at Schulich, and then the last one I mentioned I took on exchange. So that was called Analytics Foundation. But I'll talk about the other Schulich one I took. So that's called Supply Chain Management. And I mentioned it before, but it's a more, aside from the other 2 courses I talked about, this is a more theory course. And it's actually a great course because it falls under a lot of the other specializations as well. So you can do several specializations at once. But basically, yeah, this course is more, it's very theory based. It just covers like operations and logistics from a theoretical perspective. It talks about different management systems, how logistics works. So all the back end that you don't think about. So all the processes in the back end, how do they all work? And yeah, so again, it's very simple. I think there's like weekly case assignments that are like, only 2 of them are selected for actually marking, and then there's a midterm and a final, but they're pretty easy exams, like they're multiple choice and long answers. So again, very theoretical. So it was a nice balance for my other OMIS courses because I took them all the same semester. Probably not the best idea, but yeah, I just wanted to get it over with. So yeah.
Okay, and so what kind of clubs did you get involved with while at Schulich, and were there any that aligned with your specialization? So let's start with Hiba for this one.
So I was involved in the York Entrepreneurship Society as well as JDCC. So I would definitely say that's the best way you can learn, and that's the best way you can meet other people, as well as, you know, create a community at Schulich, is to become involved. JDCC was like, although I did it in my last year, I really, really wish I had done it, you know, prior, my second year, my third year, because it was just a really cool community and really pushed me to work on my case competition skills, my presentation skills, you know, in terms of just like working on cases that would have benefited me in class in like prior years. So I would definitely say join JDCC if you can. And yeah.
Okay, Abhishan.
So I also had JDCC also. So that was one of the main ones, and that kind of aligned with my specialization because I ended up competing in the entrepreneurship category. So that was really cool. Another club I did get involved with was UBS also. I was like VP of athletics. That didn't really do anything with my specialization. That was just something I really just enjoyed because I love playing sports, and like I love being in the being involved in the intramural community at York. So I just really wanted to do that on the side. But other than that, JDCC, like Hibba's said a lot about it already. I did for 2 years. Amazing experience, amazing conference. I'm actually like helping running it now. I'm actually part of like the PT, like the program team to run it, just because I had such an amazing experience. I wanted to like give back, kind of thing. So that kind of just shows the caliber of the conference.
Okay, and Priyanka.
Yeah, so I wasn't like super into the club scene at Schulich. Honestly, I should have been more, but I kind of like directed my interests like outside of Schulich or elsewhere. So in terms of like case comps and things like that, I did a bunch in like first and second year, and then I quickly realized I wasn't that great. And obviously, what you want to do is actually go and do more and improve. My kind of thing was just backing away and being like, okay, I don't think I thrive in that kind of environment because it's high pressure, high stakes. A lot of people that were competing were really good speakers, and I think I just felt intimidated. And I kind of went to what I knew best. And I work in a more autonomous role. So I like to be independent and kind of do things on the back end. So which is kind of explains where I am in terms of a career. But outside of Schulich, I did start a club called Artists Anonymous York U. So it was with a bunch of like York students, and I do music on the side outside of school. And so I was just looking for something that kind of aligned with something else outside of business, because I know Schulich has like all the clubs at Schulich are very business oriented. So I was just looking for something different. And so we started that club, and that was pretty fun. Unfortunately, because it was really new and a lot of members kept like going in and out, it was hard to like keep it alive, but it was a good time while we had it happening. But yeah, I kind of did stuff outside of school. So I did a lot of music stuff outside of school. And like with internships and things like that, you just keep yourself busy that way, because I was also working as well. So I didn't really like do a lot of club stuff, but I definitely recommend it. Like a lot of people look like they have a lot of fun. I know JDCC was a huge like thing. I never joined it personally, but you can see like everybody's like Instagram stories and stuff like that. People are having a great time. So honestly, go for it, guys.
Hey, well, it is 7:30. We're just going to quickly run to the last slide.
So this slide is for those of you who have questions about your personal progress degree report. And if you have questions about enrollment, please email undergraduate@schulich.yorku.ca. You can email either Luba or Mariana. You can reach out to either one of them. So Luba is the new director of the FCS, and Mariana is your undergraduate programs coordinator, or like your advisor. So those of you who worked with Kathleen during this past year, unfortunately her contract has ended, but Rohini will be coming back very soon. So those of you who had Rohini before, she will come back. Please don't wait until closer to September to ask questions about enrollment, especially because our dates are coming up really quickly. So I highly encourage you to reach out. Even if you just need advising, they do offer virtual advising right now. So with that, we'd like to thank all of our panelists for coming out virtually, and all of you for showing up on a hot July evening. We hope to see you tomorrow for our last event as well, and we hope you actually found this really useful. So with that, you are good to leave. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Everyone.